There is a moment when disrespect begins, but most people never notice it. It does not begin with an insult. It does not begin when someone suddenly raises their voice at you, ignores your opinion, or treats you as though you are insignificant. It begins much earlier. It begins in the quiet moments when someone realizes that your boundaries can be negotiated. Sure. They notice what you tolerate. They notice what you forgive repeatedly. They notice how quickly you apologize, even when you have done nothing wrong. They notice how desperately you seek acceptance and how afraid you are of losing people. Human beings are constantly reading one another. Long before words are spoken, we study behavior. We observe hesitation, insecurity, patterns, contradictions, and emotional reactions. And when someone discovers that your need for their approval is stronger than your commitment to your own dignity, something changes inside the relationship. They realize they have influence over you. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths about human nature. People rarely disrespect you simply because they are cruel. Sometimes they disrespect the permission you have unconsciously given them. Every time you allow a small violation without consequence, you teach the other person something. You teach the other person something. You teach them where real boundary is. Imagine someone making a sarcastic comment about you. This is what you laugh nervously, even though it bothers you. The next time the comment becomes harsher, you remain silent again because you do not want conflict. Eventually, what once felt unacceptable becomes normal, not because you wanted it to become normal, but because your repeated behavior silently communicated that it was acceptable. This is why self-respect is not merely a pleasant quality. It is a psychological foundation. A person who genuinely respects themselves does not need to announce their worth. They do not constantly demand recognition. They do not become recognition. They do not become aggressive whenever someone challenges them. Their strength is quieter. They know that their value does not rise and fall according to another person's opinion. And this creates a strange psychological effect. People become more careful around someone who is not desperate to be accepted. Why? Because manipulation depends upon emotional dependence. If approval controls you, approval can be used against you. If rejection terrifies you, rejection becomes a weapon. If you cannot walk away, the other person knows you will tolerate almost anything to remain connected. If you insist, sure. But when you become capable of leaving what repeatedly violates your dignity, the entire balance changes. You no longer need to threaten anyone. You simply become unwilling to betray yourself. That difference is enormous. True strength does not always appear as confrontation. Sometimes it appears as distance. Sometimes it appears as silence. Sometimes it appears as refusing to explain yourself for the 10th time. You begin to understand that protecting your peace is not the same as punishing another person. You are not trying to make them suffer. You are simply to make them suffer. You are simply refusing to participate in what diminishes you. And once this inner decision becomes stable, something else begins to change. Your behavior becomes consistent. You stop saying one thing and doing another. You stop establishing boundaries only when you are angry. You stop making empty threats. You stop negotiating your principles simply because someone is disappointed with you. This consistency becomes your reputation. People begin to learn that your boundaries are real because they have experienced the consequence of crossing them. And the most powerful consequence is not rage. It is the loss of access to you, your attention, your time, your energy, your presence. When someone understands that disrespect may cost them access to a person who genuinely values themselves, they begin to think twice. This is where respect begins. Not in demanding that others respect you, but in developing an inner standard that you refuse to abandon. Because once you stop negotiating your dignity, other people have far fewer opportunities to negotiate it for you. And once you stop negotiating your dignity, other people have far fewer opportunities to negotiate it for you. Didn't say the diminishes, but there is another layer to this transformation that most people overlook. It is not enough to know your worth. You must also learn how to communicate from that place. Because a person can have strong principles and still weaken their position by explaining themselves too much. There is a subtle form of insecurity hidden inside excessive explanation. You make a decision and immediately feel the need to justify it. Someone disagrees with you, and you begin defending yourself before they have even finished yourself, before speaking. Someone criticizes you, and you rush to explain your intentions, your reasons, your past, your circumstances. You believe you are protecting yourselves, but psychologically, something else may be happening. You may be communicating that their opinion has enough power over you to force you into proving your worth. And the more you explain, the more information you give away, your emotions, your fears, your intentions, your weaknesses, your need to be understood. There is nothing wrong with communication. Silence is not strength when it is used to avoid honesty. But there is a difference between communicating with purpose and speaking because you are afraid of being misunderstood. The person who has truly accepted themselves does not feel compelled to correct every perception. They understand something deeper. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Some people ask questions because they genuinely want to understand you. Is silent. Others ask questions because they are searching for a weakness. they can use. Wisdom lies in knowing the difference. This is why controlled speech can become a form of psychological strength. When your words are rare, deliberate, and meaningful, people begin to pay attention differently. Think about the person in a room who talks constantly. They comment on everything. They interrupt. They reveal their opinions before anyone asks. They explain every decision. They react to every disagreement. Eventually, people know exactly how that person thinks, what makes them angry, what makes them insecure, and what kind of approval they crave. There is no mystery left. And what can be predicted can often be influenced. Now, imagine someone else entering the same room. They listen. They observe. They do not rush to fill every silence. They allow others to reveal themselves. And when they finally speak, their words are measured. They do not need 10 sentences. They do not need 10 sentences when 3 will do. They do not speak to prove is imminent. They do not speak to prove that they are intelligent. They speak because there is something worth saying. The difference is not simply quietness. It is self-command. Silence becomes powerful when it comes from someone who could speak, but chooses not to. But not to. This is why a calm response can sometimes have more psychological weight than an emotional argument. Imagine someone insulting you in front of others. One person immediately becomes defensive. Their voice decides. Their voice rises. They begin explaining themselves, trying desperately to prove that the insult was unfair. Was unfair. The other person pauses. They look at the speaker calmly. Perhaps they answer with one sentence. Perhaps they say nothing. Suddenly, the emotional energy changes. The person who expected a reaction no longer knows what effect their words had, and uncertainty creates caution. Uncertainty creates caution. This does not mean you should become cold or distant from everyone. It means you should stop giving every person, every unrestricted access to your inner world. Your emotions are yours. Your private thoughts are yours. Your plans are yours. Not every thought needs to become a public statement. Not every criticism deserves a response. Not every accusation deserves a defense. And not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. There is tremendous freedom realizing this. There is tremendous freedom in realizing this. You begin to understand that your peace does not depend upon controlling what everyone thinks about you. Some people will misunderstand you. Let them. Some will criticize you. Listen if there is something useful, and discard what is not. Some will try to provoke you. Pause before responding. Because the moment you become responsible for controlling every person's perception of you, you become psychologically dependent upon them. And dependence weakens the very self-respect you worked to build. The strongest communication often comes from someone who is not desperate to be heard. Their silence does not mean they have nothing to say. It means they have learned that attention is valuable. Words are valuable. Energy is valuable. And they no longer spend these things carelessly. But there is an even deeper reason to become intentional with your words. Every reaction teaches people something about you. If they insult you and you immediately explode, they learn how to control you. If they criticize you and you desperately defend yourself, they learn that your approval depends upon their acceptance. If they pressure you and you immediately surrender, they learn that your boundaries disappear under pressure. But if you remain composed, listen carefully, and respond only when necessary, you send an entirely different message. You are not easily moved. You are not easily manipulated. And you do not need to prove your identity every time someone questions it. This is where self-respect begins to transform into presence. You no longer enter conversations seeking permission to exist. You enter them already grounded within yourself. And when a person reaches that state, something else becomes necessary. Because powerful words mean very little when your actions contradict them. A boundary that is spoken but never enforced eventually becomes nothing more than a request. And this is where your next transformation begins. Because a boundary that is spoken but never enforced eventually becomes nothing more than a request. You can tell someone, "Do not speak to me that way." You can explain what you will and will not accept. You can describe your standards with perfect clarity. But if the same behavior continues and you remain exactly where you were, your words slowly lose their meaning. People learn from patterns. They watch what happens after they cross a line. A small disrespectful comment may seem insignificant at first. Someone interrupts you repeatedly. A friend contacts you only when they need something. A colleague takes you when they need something. A colleague takes credit for your work. Someone makes a joke at your expense and watches to see whether you will object. These moments may appear too small to matter, but human relationships are rarely shaped by one dramatic event. Dorsey and Kellis, they are shaped by repetition. When a person crosses a small boundary and discovers that nothing changes, they become curious. They begin to wonder how much further they can go. And if the next boundary also produces no consequence, the lesson becomes stronger eventually. Eventually, the behavior that once shocked you becomes normal. Not because the other person suddenly became more disrespectful, but because the relationship taught them that they could get away with it. This is why boundaries must exist in behavior, not merely in language. A boundary is not a threat. It is a decision about what you will do when a certain behavior continues. There is a profound difference between saying, "You better not do that again," and quietly deciding, "If this continues, I will no longer give this person the same access to my time, attention, or presence. The first depends upon controlling another person. The second depends upon controlling yourself. And sure, and that is where real power begins. You do not need to force anyone to behave correctly. You only need to become consistent in how you respond when they do not. This consistency creates something that words alone cannot create: credibility. People begin to understand that your standards, yours, are not emotional reactions. They are principles. You do not enforce them only when you are angry. You do not abandon them because the other person is popular, powerful, attractive, or important to you. Your standards remain the same. And that consistency becomes visible. Imagine two people who are treated disrespectfully. The first becomes angry, threatens consequences, and then forgives everything a few days later. The second remains calm. They do not shout. They do not seek revenge. They simply reduce their availability, withdraw their attention, and create distance when the behavior continues. Or thought, which person is more difficult to manipulate? The answer is obvious. The first person has made their emotions predictable. The second has made their standards predictable. There is an important distinction here. Predictable emotions can be exploited. Predictable principles create security and respect. When people know that you will explode, they can provoke you. When they know that you will eventually forgive anything because you fear anything because you're losing them next, they can pressure you. But when they know that disrespect consistently leads to distance, they understand the consequence without needing a dramatic confrontation. This is why calm boundaries are often stronger than angry ones. Anger says, "You hurt me." A boundary says, "This behavior no longer has access to me." The first seeks recognition. The second establishes reality. And this does not mean becoming cruel. In fact, some of the strongest boundaries are remarkably peaceful. The remarkably sure come. You do not have to insult someone because they insulted you. You do not have to humiliate someone because they humiliated you. You do not have to punish them. You do not have to punish them. You simply stop rewarding behavior that violates your standards. That might mean also ending a conversation. It might mean reducing contact. It might mean refusing another favor. It might mean leaving a situation that repeatedly diminishes you. The important thing is that your action matches your principles. Because every time you say one thing and do another, you weaken your own authority. And people notice. They notice when your boundaries disappear under pressure. They notice when you are firm with strangers, but submissive with people you fear losing. They notice when you demand respect from some people while tolerating disrespect from others. They notice when you speak about discipline, but repeatedly break promises to yourself. Human beings are extraordinarily sensitive to inconsistencies. A person may forget what you said months ago, but they remember the pattern of how you behaved. Your reputation is built from these patterns, not from your intentions, not from your promises, not from the image you want to project, not from what you repeatedly do. This is why trying to please everyone can become so destructive. When you constantly prioritize keeping everyone comfortable, you eventually make your own life uncomfortable. You say yes when you mean no. You remain available when you are exhausted. You forgive behavior that should have changed. You stay in relationships that repeatedly diminish you because you are afraid of being alone. And slowly, people begin to value your usefulness more than your presence. They appreciate what you provide, but they stop respecting the person providing it. The solution is not to become selfish. It is to become selective. Candidness without boundaries becomes exhaustion. Generosity without standards becomes expectation. Availability without limits becomes entitlement, infalment. But when kindness is combined with self-respect, something changes. You can still be warm without being weak. You can still be generous without being available to everyone. An alien greatling is sure you can still love people without allowing them unlimited access to you. And when someone repeatedly crosses a line, you no longer need a dramatic explanation. Your behavior becomes the explanation. Your distance becomes the message. Your consistency becomes the proof. And once your boundaries become stable, another challenge appears. Because even strong boundaries can collapse. If someone discovers how to control your emotions, the person who cannot control your boundaries may try something else. They may provoke you. They may insult you. They may challenge your authority. They may deliberately press the exact emotional wound they know will make you react. And this is where the next test of your strength begins. And this is where the next test of your strength begins. Because the moment people realize they cannot control your boundaries, they may try to control your emotions. They may criticize you in front of others. They may question your intelligence. They may insult you. They may deliberately misunderstand you. They misattitude. They may say something they know will hurt you, simply to discover whether they can make you react. And in that moment, the real battle is no longer happening between you and them. It is happening within you. Because the person who can control your emotional reaction can influence your behavior. Think about how easily a single sentence can change the entire direction of an interaction. One insult can turn a calm person into an angry one. One accusation can make someone desperate to defend themselves. One rejection can make someone beg for acceptance. One criticism can make someone spend an hour proving that they are worthy. They're worthy. The other person may have said only a few words, yet those words have said only a few words. Those words have taken control of your attention, your mood, and your actions. This is why emotional control is such a deep form of personal power. Strength is not the absence of emotion. You will still feel anger. You will still experience disappointment. You will still feel humiliation, frustration, fear, and pain. The difference is what happens between the moment you feel the emotion and the moment you act. Most people allow those two moments to become one. They feel anger and immediately speak. They feel threatened and immediately attack. They feel rejected and immediately chase. They feel embarrassed and immediately defend themselves. But there is another possibility. You can feel everything without becoming everything you feel. You can notice the anger rising inside you and refuse to hand it the steering wheel. You can pause. You can breathe. You can observe what is happening inside you or deciding what to do with the shoe before deciding what to do with it. That small space between emotion and action can completely change the outcome of an interaction. Imagine someone insulting you publicly. The first reaction may be to prove them, may be wronged. Your mind begins producing arguments. Your body becomes tense. Your voice becomes sharper. You begin speaking faster. You want everyone in the room to understand that that you have been treated unfairly. But notice what has already happened. The other person has successfully changed your emotional state. Your choice, they have moved you away from yourself. Now imagine another response. You hear the insult. You feel the anger. But you do not immediately act. You pause. You look at the person. You allow the silence to exist. Then you either respond calmly or decide that the comment does not deserve your energy. Imminent. Something different happens. The insult no longer controls the direction of the interaction. Your emotions belong to you again. This is not weakness. It is discipline, and discipline becomes especially powerful when someone is deliberately trying to provoke you. A person who knows exactly what makes you angry has discovered a psychological lever. They do not need to overpower you. They only need to pull the right emotional string. If one particular insult always makes you lose control, they have learned something valuable about you. If rejection always makes you chase, they know how to make you chase. If criticism always makes you defend yourself, they know how to keep you occupied. Your reactions become predictable, and predictable reactions can be manipulated. This is why emotional self-knowledge is so important. You must know what triggers you, not so that you can suppress those emotions, but so that you can understand them. Ask yourself, why does this particular comment hurt me so deeply? Why do I feel the need to prove myself? Why does this person's approval matter so much? Why am I afraid of walking away? Often, The intensity of your reaction reveals something deeper than the situation itself. A small criticism may touch an old insecurity. A simple rejection may awaken an old fear of being unwanted. A disagreement may trigger the hidden belief that being wrong means being worthless. This all is the external event is only the surface. Beneath it lies something within you asking to be understood. And when you begin to understand that hidden part of yourself, other people's words lose some of their power. You no longer need them to confirm that you are worthy. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to correct every false assumption. You become capable of letting people misunderstand you without collapsing internally. That is a profound kind of freedom. Because the person who must constantly control how others perceive them is never truly free. They are living in reaction. But the person who can remain centered while others become emotional begins to possess something rare. Inner stability. People notice it. They notice that shouting does not move you. Insults do not easily disturb you. Pressure does not immediately change your decisions. Manipulation does not produce the expected reaction. And slowly, they become more careful. Not because they are afraid of your anger, because they realize your behavior cannot easily be controlled from the outside. Sure, this is why the calmest person in a conflict can sometimes possess the greatest psychological advantage. While everyone else is reacting, they are observing. While everyone else is speaking, they are thinking. While everyone else is trying to win the moment, they are protecting the larger picture. The larger, they understand that one emotional outburst can destroy something that took years to build. A reputation, a relationship, a career, a decision, a sense of self-respect. So they pause. They choose their response instead of allowing someone else to choose it for them. And eventually, something even more powerful happens. People begin to associate you with stability. They learn that intimidation does not easily move you. They learn that insults do not automatically control you. They learn that pressure does not make you abandon your principles. Your calmness becomes part of your reputation. And once people understand that they cannot control you through your emotions, another question begins to emerge. What happens when they realize that they might actually lose access to you? Because emotional control protects your inner world. But there is another source of power that changes how others values your presence, your value itself. When your time, attention, energy, and presence become something that cannot simply be taken for granted, people begin to see you differently. And this is where respect moves beyond what you say or how you react. It begins to depend upon what your presence is worth. It begins to depend upon what your presence is worth. Human beings naturally value what they believe they could lose. When something is constantly available, it can slowly become invisible. The same principle. The same principle can appear in relationships. If you answer every message immediately, cancel your own priorities whenever someone asks. Yenese priorities is whenever someone asks. Remain available regardless of how you are treated. And give your attention and show how you are treated. And give your attention without limits. People may eventually stop experiencing your presence as something valuable. What was once appreciated becomes expected. What was once generosity becomes an obligation. And when something becomes an obligation, their gratitude often disappears. This does not mean you should deliberately ignore people or pretend to be unavailable. It means you should understand the difference between being valuable, accessible, and being constantly accessible. Your time has value. Your attention has value. Your energy has value. And where you place those things communicates something about what matters to you. A person who respects their own time does not give every moment away. Someone asks simply because someone asks. They have priorities. They have a purpose. They have a life that exists beyond the demands of other people. This selectiveness creates a different kind of presence. When people know that your attention is not unlimited, they begin to appreciate it differently. But genuine value goes much deeper than simply becoming less available. You cannot create lasting respect by pretending to be mysterious. You cannot create importance by deliberately ignoring messages. You cannot build real influence by acting superior. Eventually, the appearance collapses. Real value comes from becoming someone whose presence genuinely adds something to the lives of others. Knowledge, discipline, reliability, skill, character, emotional stability, integrity. These qualities cannot be easily imitated for long. A person may pretend to be confident, but eventually pressure reveals them. A person may pretend to be disciplined, but eventually inconsistencies exposes them. A person may demand respect, but eventually their actions reveal whether they deserve it. This is why personal growth is one of the strongest foundations of respect. And when you continue developing yourself, you become less dependent upon external validation. You do not need everyone to recognize your worth because you know what you have built within yourself. And this creates something even more important. Options. A person with no options is easier to control. If you believe you cannot leave a relationship, you will tolerate more. Besides, if you believe you cannot leave a toxic environment, you will accept more. If you believe one person's approval determines your future, you will compromise more. But when you build skills, confidence, discipline, independence, and inner stability, you begin to realize that walking away is sometimes possible. That realization changes everything. You stop holding on to people simply because you are afraid of being alone. You stop accepting disrespect simply because you are afraid of losing the relationship. You stop sacrificing your identity to preserve connections that require you to become smaller, require you to exist. And sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is not spoken at all. You leave, not dramatically, not with revenge, not with an announcement designed to make the other person regret their behavior. You simply recognize that the relationship no longer aligns with your standards, and you remove yourself. This is not punishment, it is alignment. You are choosing your life over the fear of losing someone. And when people understand that you are genuinely capable of walking away, the dynamic changes. They realize that access to you is not guaranteed. But there is still one final element without which everything else remains incomplete. Consistency. Because you can understand self-respect. You can speak carefully. You can establish boundaries. You can control your emotions. You can develop your value. But if your behavior changes whenever pressure appears, people will eventually discover the weakness beneath the appearance. Meets sicht. Your reputation is not built by one powerful moment. It is built through hundreds of ordinary decisions. Every promise you keep adds something. Every boundary you protect adds something. Every time you remain calm under pressure, something is added. Every time you refuse to betray your principles for approval, something is added. Slowly, these moments become a pattern, and that pattern becomes your character. Eventually, people no longer need to wonder what you will do. They already know. They have seen it before. They have watched you remain calm. They have watched you walk away from manipulation. They have watched you refuse disrespect. They have watched your word, you keep your nobody watching, even when nobody was watching. Your reputation begins to speak before you do. This is why character is stronger than image. An image depends upon what people think you of today. Character determines what they will discover about you tomorrow. You can carefully manage an image for a while. But pressure eventually reveals what is underneath. If your confidence is real, pressure strengthens it. If your boundaries are real, pressure does not erase them. If your principles are real, they remain present even when following them costs you something. And this is the point where respect becomes almost effortless. You no longer need to demand it. You no longer need to threaten people. You no longer need to remind them of your worth. Your behavior has already answered the question. People remember patterns. They remember who remained calm when everyone else became emotional. The one thing, they remember who refused to be manipulated. They remember who could say no without hatred. They remember who could walk away without creating chaos. And those memories quietly shape the way they treat you in the future. So if you want people to think twice before disrespecting you, do not begin by trying to frighten them. Instead, begin by becoming someone who no longer abandons themselves. Respect yourself deeply. Speak with intention. Speak with intention. Let your boundaries exist through action. Master the space between emotion and reaction. Build a life that gives you genuine value and independence. And then become consistent, because the strongest form of respect is not created when people fear your anger. It is created when they understand your character. They know that your identity cannot be purchased with approval. Your principles cannot be negotiated through pressure. Your attention cannot be demanded. Your emotions cannot easily be manipulated. And your presence cannot be taken for granted. At that point, you are no longer chasing respect. You have become the kind of person whose life naturally communicates it. There missays. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson of all. Oh, sure, you cannot force another human being to respect you, but you can decide what you will tolerate. You can decide what you will become. You can decide where your energy goes. You can decide when to speak. You can decide when to speak. You can decide when to remain silent. You can decide when to stay. And you can decide when to walk away. When those decisions become aligned with your deepest values, Kari, something changes inside you. You stop needing the world to confirm your worth. And when you no longer need that confirmation, the world has far less power to take it away. Respect then stops being something you desperately pursued. It becomes something your character quietly earns. Not through intimidation, not through aggression, not through fear, but through the calm, consistent, undeniable evidence of who you have chosen to become.